Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Go with the Biden.
Everybody hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure, otherwise it'll be a very dull session.
Yes.
I think
Hello, Alexandra.
Good morning. Eggs? Sure. Sorry.
Oh. Well, we have 4 latecomers. I guess they're making coffee. Or just waking up, right? I got your questions, Alexandra, just this morning, so we can go over them with the group.
Okay. There were just some general things as I was going through the tests.
Yes.
And then I was trying to recap the videos, and it just, I guess it wasn't adding up.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, those are good questions. I sent everybody through email. I sent you 2 files.
Yeah.
Right, and I hope they're helpful. They kind of summarize the code of ethics and conduct, kind of encapsulate it, and then the other one is on the project delivery, based on what you were referring to, Jorge.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, it's entanglement, right? Once you get
It
your
is
arm.
because I feel like I do understand them, what each one is, but
Mhm.
whenever I get asked a question, okay, well, between all of these, which one do you think is the best? That's what I'm starting to think about. It gets difficult.
Yeah,
The why.
Sometimes it's the way they phrase the question or the
Mhm,
context they put the question in, which is frustrating.
mhm,
But we can spend some time on that, because I think that is a key topic that's really across this exam and a lot of the other exams as well.
mhm.
You'll run into it in CE.
Okay.
exam. Those of you who are in practice are practicing now with firms. Do you know what type of contracts they typically are going with in terms of project delivery? Is it usually design, bid, build?
No, right now, one project we're doing a concourse expansion in Grand Rapids. It's going to be a CM at risk. And
Okay.
they just brought it on board. But they just brought it on board at the end of schematic design,
I
which we're
see.
wrapping up this week.
Okay, well that's good. That's a
Yeah,
good experience to have.
yeah, it is. I mean,
So
up to this point,
on
we've
that
just had
selection
a cost estimator.
on the selection of that constructor, did you go after qualifications?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There were quals, and then one of our team members was part of the selection process
Okay.
for the architecture team. Yeah.
So just to refresh everybody on that at risk constructor at risk. So that means that they're going with a guaranteed maximum price, GMP.
Yes.
And everybody knows when they says fixed cost plus fee,
Okay.
the fee they're referring to the fee as the profit.
Yeah, but we're gonna have to talk about this later. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
You got in.
I believe so. Have a great day. Yes. Thank you.
Hey, David. I hope you don't share any confidential information because you're online with the rest of the world.
Can you
Is
guys
that-
hear me?
Yeah, we can all hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I
We
had a
can
problem.
hear you. We can see you.
Wonderful.
We heard exactly what compensation you're making, what your
I
your
get
age,
$1
your
a
age
year.
and height.
$1 a year, just like the owner of Facebook.
Have any of you run into the problem where you send an email out and you realize you sent it to more people than you wanted to? Has that ever happened to you before?
Yes.
That's really dangerous, isn't it?
Email, voicemail, didn't say goodbye on a conference call properly. You name it.
Oh boy, I ran into a problem which actually ended up losing my client. We were on a conference call with an investor, and after we got off the call, we concluded the call, but the investor and his agent and I stayed on the line. But the client also had a representative who stayed on the line quietly. So we didn't close out the conversation. So he heard all the inside talk.
Yeah.
So that was really that was a lesson learned.
Oh, I've seen people not mute properly in a conference call and then just go like, dropping the F-bomb about the client. That was brutal.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with these technologies today. So we're missing Carla and Edgar right now before we can start. I'll give them a few more minutes. And then
We had a project. Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say back to the conversation before. We had a project and we were working with a Japanese firm, and it was funny because it wasn't going well, but they had a translator translating everything from English to Japanese, and our urban planner, who was not muted at the time, and things were going south on the meeting, he started talking really bad about the process, and you could tell we were like he was just venting frustration, and then he was not supposed to be, he wasn't intended to be heard, and then everybody paused, and then all we heard was the Japanese translator translate that.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
And we're like, oh no.
Stop.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, that was not part of it.
The worst part of that sounds like it wasn't instant, so you had to like just brace yourself for what was coming next.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's part of it. We're like, oh no, here it comes. This is the one, because they translate every single thing verbatim, right? They're just hired to do that. So yeah, it was kind of watching it in slow motion just explode.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's a funny on translation. I was at a conference in we're in geez, I think it's Barbados. Barbados, right? It's French speaking. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we had the conference. We had local translators translating the French into the English, and most of us in the audience could understood enough French to know that the translator was making a really bad job. So we literally stopped the speaker, this translator, and said, "Oh, you either need to get somebody else or just stop because you're misleading the audience." So he was fired on the spot and
Oh
brought
boy.
somebody else in.
Yeah.
No, translation is tough because there's idioms that you can't really translate very well sometimes.
Mm, yeah.
Well, let's see. Why don't we? Well, it's 9:09. I'll give him one more minute to see if we get him to join us, and then I'll have to read them their rights afterwards. Yeah, going back to the project delivery, it's as I wrote out that outline for you, the summary. It's obviously difficult because there's different ways you can play it. I mean, there's different. For example, you can take different types of contracts. Stipulated sum. You can do hourly. You can do guaranteed maximum price,
Mm-hmm.
with or without, on so many of the different project delivery methods. So don't get confused by that. Just some of them are pretty specific about what they can do, and others aren't. I mean, for example, take the just the B101 contract, right, with architects. So your fees can be established multitude of ways. So don't get wrapped up that it's only one way you can do that. I expect most firms do the percentage. Is that your experience? Those of you who work for firms, that's how they calculate the cost, is based on a percentage of the total estimated construction cost of the project.
Yeah, on the larger ones.
For the most part.
Yes, and
For us,
yes,
on the larger ones, we actually just do hourly because the clients, they don't really care how much they pay. They just want it done.
oh, nice.
Yeah, we're the same way.
Well, is that transparency? I mean, do they see your books, or you basically just submit your hourly rates and
Oh, they see everything.
it's all transparent? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we use the B105.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
We just
the-
detail it out in timesheets, and then when they ask, we just give them all of our timesheets where it's detailed out what we were doing each day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's
great.
exactly the same.
Well, that's a
What
very
kind
safe.
of clients are they?
I do high-end residential, so like I had one project where they bought a house in the Hamptons for $17 million and then did $11 million renovation. And she didn't even care about an AIA contract. She just like throwing money at people, like finish my house.
So they just have an hourly contract with your company?
Yeah, we just by the hour because they're just The
Makes
smaller
sense.
projects usually do the fee because they can't afford to go over it.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's not they're not worried about cost. They just want it done.
Mhm.
Because the Hamptons has a deadline. It's a memorial to Labor Day.
Yeah, I have a client right now who thinks she's moving in July, and I told her it was more like October. So then she's been miraculously making decisions. Within 3 days, she's made like 20 decisions.
Because there's no October season in the Hamptons.
Right.
I had some clients who they were so wealthy they didn't even care about hourly. They just said, just do it, send me a bill. And they left and had the interior designer, and they wanted to come back and have the entire thing set up for like a big reunion. So the table had to be set, all the silverware, everything had to be out, the candles, everything out, and just send me a bill.
I've never had that experience.
Yeah, those are rare though.
I have a lot of clients though who just do hourly. I think it's just the work we do.
Which company are you with?
It's called Austin Patterson Dixon. It's a high-end residential firm. So most of our clients are in Lower Fairfield County, Connecticut, or the Hamptons. Just single-family
like
residential for the most part.
I like that.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and read this and move on. So please note that everything discussed during this meeting is confidential, and by agreeing to receive such information, you're required to keep all such information confidential. Additionally, please note that Black Spectacles takes the cheating and content disclosure and ARE candidate agreement policy set forth by NCARB very seriously. Should you share any information that would violate the terms set forth in those policies, Black Spectacles will be required to report you to NCARB. Copies of these policies can be found at this website. By being involved in this program, you are committed to sending in questions, being active during meetings and on Slack, and being present at every meeting for the full length of said meeting. Should you miss one meeting or fail to abide by the above, you will be required to leave the program with no refund. Additionally, you confirm you will not share any copyrighted materials whatsoever over Slack, email, etc. Lastly, you confirm you will be respectful of all other program participants, candidates, and coaches, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. Okay. So to begin with, does anybody have any questions? I know some of you have been taking exams and getting scores back. How are you doing in terms of monitoring your time on the exams? I see, Jorge, you've got about 20 minutes, 30 minutes left over.
Mm-hmm.
That's good?
Yeah, not bad. Mm-hmm.
I've gone right up to
I still had
the time allotted. I don't know why I never seem to have any time left over. I finished like with 5 minutes left.
Okay, and how are you scoring?
I'm not doing good. But I think I figured it out. Especially with the going to the end like we're supposed to, and then reading the questions before going over. So like immediately going to the last two sections of the test, and then reviewing it. I think I've been doing it kind of backwards, but now I think I have a much better process going forward.
Okay.
I actually enjoy taking the mock tests. It's kind of fun.
So you think that jumping to the end and doing those longer problems first is helpful?
Absolutely. The very first thing I would do is to go to the end. I just read the questions and then go over the information they're giving you, because probably half of them you don't even need to read it. I always end up taking far more time with the last two sections than the multiple choice.
So you know when to cut yourself off if you're spending too much time on those?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, I'm spending an incredible amount of time on the last two sections. So
just in general, how many minutes are people spending on case studies? 10 minutes? 30 minutes? What do you
say?
15
for
15?
For me, it's been about 20 to 30 minutes per case study.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes just researching like the random one that had the ABA one in there. I'm like, oh crap, I know this, but I should probably look it up. It was the searching for the information. Like, there's something in here that's not adding up.
I didn't realize you can actually search the PDF for keywords. So before I was just scrolling. But now you can actually, I found that search button.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody who did the exam, and they said they actually, even on the table of contents, they have tabs too, I think, or some sort of, I don't know, I guess chapter, or yeah, I guess the tabs. If you open up the tab, sometimes they have highlighted or section off areas that you can jump into easier or quicker.
Yeah, I think that they've made it. I think we talked about this last time. Is that you can go to the index as well if you want to look for something, but obviously the table of contents and the search. So everybody needs to practice that, because it's crazy to go through the resources and scroll down. Yeah, they're not making it that difficult for you. So you've got those three tools to go for. You're right. Some people found the answers in the table of contents. They know exactly what to do.
Yeah, and I remember on my first exam, I don't know if anybody else that took it had this problem, but there was incredible lag in having the PDFs at the actual exam show up. So every time I would scroll, it would say loading, and then it would pop up, and it would just do that page by page. It was really, really slow.
And you still passed,
yeah,
right?
I still passed, but I was sweating
That's
it for a
pretty
little
good.
bit.
Yeah, I think people should give comments back to NCARB about that Prometric experience because they need to be aware of some of these challenges that the people get into. Okay, so you're spending about 20 to 30 minutes per case study. So that strategy is working for you, David, to do those first and then go into your questions.
Yeah, and on the first test, when I was figuring out the lot size, I don't know what I was thinking, but I think I overcomplicated it. And I think I tend to think about it from my own experience of the multiple choice of professional practice instead of what it is in the exam. And I keep thinking I would never do this. And then I go back and I'm like, why did that's just not right. And I got to stop doing that.
Right.
I know. That's how I felt by practice management, believe me.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Is you got to disengage yourself from reality and go back to what the books say.
Yeah, exactly.
Because essentially, what NCARB's looking for is they're looking. If you're going to become a licensed architect, that means that you can go out on your own and start your own practice. So you've got to follow the law. You got to follow the code. You got to follow the ethics. You got to follow the contracts. So that's kind of what they're expecting. You just isn't create your own world. Right, as it were, and I know that happens in realities. You sometimes forget about some of those rules, but that's what NCARB's gearing it on. They don't care about your personal practice habits. So that is the tough thing that people are struggling with. Is that I have a lot of candidates who say that's not how we do it at all. So say, well, that's not going to help you pass the test. Anything else on any tips anybody else has? Nope.
No. Yesterday when I took the other practice exam, I was trying to think what my brain dump was going to be for this exam, and I think my brain dump for the first one was defined with all the formulas. This one I'm not so sure. I'm going to have a brain dump. So unless somebody has recommendations of things we should like absolutely memorize and dump, that would be good to know.
What about the types of contracts, like type D or E, G? If you don't know those, that might be a good brain dump if it's hard to memorize.
Mm-hmm.
Or those weird ones for the consultants. I've tried to start making my dump list yesterday as well. I'm like, okay, what is the last thing I need to see before I walk in there?
Right.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is the brain dump is what you're going to scratch down on scratch paper, right?
Yep.
Exactly. So I would put down definitely those key contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing would be any particular dates or times in those contracts. Remember that list that I sent you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd put some of those down so that you can quickly refer to those. Any
formulas you guys think we'll have to expect on this one?
They can hit you with some of the costs. So going into those chapters of that we went through in PCM, you might
do a refresher.
You do a refresher on some of those, particularly when it comes down to fees, budgeting. But I don't think there'll be a lot of those that would really trip you up. If they do, then I would move right by them.
Sure.
Because the other questions are going to be, does everybody feel comfortable with the codes and ethics, the canons?
Yeah.
You know all of those? Okay, good. I sent you that list as a refresher.
Yeah.
Because they could hit you with 3 or 4 questions about that, because they do want architects to honor and not get involved in fraud or conflict of interest, particularly the key issues on the environment, obligations to the environment. So know all the different obligations to those different categories. I think you need to know those. If you need to jot them down on scratch paper, which you start off with and do that, that would be a very quick thing to do. So you don't have to, you can just kind of put that aside then. I don't think they'll get into the weeds in terms of the goals so much as they will maybe what's mandatory, the rules. That's maybe what they'll will go into, because the other things aren't mandatory, right? They're kind of aspirations and goals in the ethics, but the mandatory ones are the ones which they might drill down on. In a question. Let me go to this topic that this is a question that Alexandra sent recently, and I think it's relevant for everybody to have a discussion about. This is regarding the AI contracts and architects conducting estimates for projects, and I'm sure most of you do this. I mean, maybe you are working with high-end clients, maybe you don't do any estimates because they don't care. But typically, as you know, in the B101, the architect basically does provide cost estimates. So Alexandra's questions was, is the architect required to help the owner understand the budget? And the answer is yes. It's our responsibility to advise the client on cost projections in order to manage the expectations of the client's goals within their budget. You don't want to start off a contract with a client who says, I want a Mercedes, but I can only afford a bicycle. You just got to stop it right there. Say, okay, let's readjust the program, what your expectations, and I'm going to kind of keep you in touch with that budget and as the project evolves. And the method I use is I basically use a local cost per square foot on the preliminary design phase, where I either work with local architects who are friends of mine or contractors, and I find out what's the actual going price of a project of that similar type. And then I kind of work with that and create an Excel sheet. So as the client's building up the square footage of their project, I can give them an equivalent cost per square foot in that early design phase. Then as you move through, the next questions you had, Alexandra, were about SD and DD and CD. So obviously, it's not an additional service. Basically, an additional service, if you look at B101, it will list in section 4.1.1.12, it will identify that if you're going to add additional professional cost estimating services, that would be a supplemental service. Make sure everybody understands the difference between supplemental and additional. Okay? Because that could trip you up. It sounds like additional services should be something after the fact, right? After the contract commences, but they've reversed it. Supplemental service is what's in the contract B101. Additional services happens after the project's commenced. And it's very well spelled out in section 4.2 what additional services are and how they begin. So under supplemental services, there's a long list, and you can add to that list as you're writing the contract with the client. If there's something on that list that's you want to add as a supplemental service and identify a cost or a fee for that service and who's going to do that service, then you put it in that sheet.
So what you're saying is that between the two, the difference is if you want interior design services, if you add it before the work begins, it's supplemental because you're adding it to the contract before it's signed, etc.
Right.
And once you add it, and if you add it after the contract is signed and the work is began, like even in DD or SD, it's additional services. Even though it's the same, it's still interior design service, but it's when it gets added.
You should probably have in there. I'm trying pulling up the contract. I can't pull it up.
You said that additional start is after the work begins. The most I can understand is that at that point the contract is in place and you are ready to go.
You can go back into the contract and say, I'm going to add interior design service. But if you remember, there's another contract for that service, right? Yeah. There's another B contract for interior design. So you would start another contract for that type of a service.
I was just using interior design as...
Yeah. Well, You'd
But
have to
there
look and
seems
see
to be a
what AI
contract.
contracts are available for those services that you enter into that engagement, or you would add it as an addition, as a supplemental service up front. And you may indicate that or the client may say, I'm not really sure I'm going to use my own interior designer, or I want you to do it. So you have to leave that. You could leave that blank and say that the owner is responsible for it. Make a check mark that the owner is responsible for that, so there's no dispute later on. That the owner comes back to you and says, "I thought you were going to do the interior design services." You say, "No, look at our contract. You've checked that box that you're still responsible for that, not me." So you try and make it very, very clear so there's no miscommunication as the project goes forward on that supplemental services.
I mean, I understand the additional services also have their own little documents, AIA document agreements, such as programming, site evaluation, historical preservation, whatever, or lead, or and then whereas I don't know if the supplementals do actually, or if they do, I haven't seen it in that way. So if you were to have additional services, I imagine because there are these additional services contracts, you would actually sign those additional service contracts. Whereas supplemental may be tucked into what you're already signing into. Is that right? Yes.
Supplemental, you're already identifying what they are. You're going to identify a fee. You're going to identify who's responsible for it. And it may even make sense to put down under if you want to go down the list in that supplemental service, you can say this has not been determined at this point, or something like that. So it's in writing. So it's just not left blank as if somebody forgot to address it. I'd say, you know what, I'm not doing measured drawings. I'm not doing existing facility surveys. You could check all that off and say that's going to be decided later on. So at least it's clear in the contract that you've covered that topic. Additional services, as it says on 4.2, they've listed kind of the reasons that you would need additional services. It's necessitated by a change in the initial information. So if the client makes a change in the project regarding size, quality, or complexity, then that could kick off an additional service. Which if it's significant, then you may need to start over and sign and write a brand new contract. Or it could be additional. It could be considered a change order, or it could be a new work order, or you find another B contract that would apply to it. Or if it's a change related to codes, laws, or regulations that have changed after you've signed the contract, that becomes an additional service. So they've listed 11 items in that additional service in 4.2. And everybody knows that you can strike out anything in these contracts, right? With your attorney, you can cross them out and you can change them. This isn't written in stone. You can modify this contract as you need to. I do it all the time. So going back to your question, I think there's just a few more points here. Yeah, does everybody understand why the architect would be doing these cost estimates from preliminary design through DD? Because obviously the design's going to evolve, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have more information as you go into design development. So now you can update the cost estimates appropriately, because the client suddenly says, "Oh, I want to go net zero energy, so I need photovoltaics on my rooftop." So that suddenly changes your whole cost estimate from preliminary design. Or if they pick a different glazing system, or if they pick a structural system that you need to shift your preliminary design estimates. So that's why you have to constantly update it. I update my cost estimate almost every time the client makes a design decision change. And that could happen 4 or 5 times in each of these phases. I just constantly am updating them. I don't want them to get their expectations, which is really the danger, right? And the last thing you talk about is what happens when the architect's cost estimate goes over budget. Everybody in B101, it talks about if the lowest bona fide bid exceeds the budget, then there's a couple things that the owner can do. right? And that's, I think we covered that on one of the questions last week. Does everybody know what the owner can do if it does go over budget?
They can
Either
build it. They can revise the scope.
phase it.
They cannot
Is it?
build it.
They cannot build it. Yeah. They can also make you do it for free. Change
They could, yeah. If the architect is not, if the architect,
Think you redesign it.
they can make you redesign it at no additional compensation. If it's something that you made a mistake on in terms of really, you forgot about something in your cost estimate that suddenly came out when the bids came back. You said, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to include that in my preliminary estimates." So if it's your fault, then the owner can come back and say you need to revise that accordingly and change the drawings to meet my budget. However, if you can justify that it wasn't your fault, then you can ask for a additional compensation.
I think that's so flawed that it's funny.
What's flawed?
The idea that the fees, you would be responsible for cost of construction, because technically you could just go to a different kind of a bidder, a cheaper type, and get the numbers to be, it's just about the contract. I can
No,
get.
it states in the contract it's the lowest bona fide bid.
Right,
which means it's a qualified bidder. Can't be a cheap bidder.
Well, but I'm saying, for example, right now I'm bidding a project in Nashville. I have $5 million and I have $10 million bidders, 3 in each category.
Yeah, and are they all bona fide?
Yeah, they just one is doing $20 million homes and is used to it, and the other ones are more middle class building homes and they are stepping up. It's just the way the contractor values themselves. But
is the lowest bid still in the budget?
Yeah, I mean, 5 million is more like what the client wants to spend than 10. But and I'm working on understanding why some people are so much, almost double. But I'm saying is that there's the idea that, and we've done so many budgeting, probably, and it still comes out crazy numbers because you can go to really high end bidders who work only with fancy folks, and it's a different model. So it would, if I had the AIA contract, it would be very hard for me to be able to commit in that environment.
Well, it's the way that an architect could charge for additional services for redoing the design so it complies with the budget or gets back in line with the budget is you were not in control over the cost changes in the marketplace. Things just went up as you're doing your early cost estimates. You can't control that. So it's things that you just can't control in your cost estimate. Right. But you should have the ability to, as you just said, you have a variety of bidders out there that you're assuming that one of them is going to come into the budget. Right. And it could be the lowest one, but it can't be a low baller, because a low baller, if you listen to the Schiff Harden lecture, he was talking about these bidders that go out there and they kind of bid low in order to win the contract, but they see all the gaps and they can see a ton of change orders in the construction documents. So they're going to assume that they're going to get all this money back by throwing in a lot of change orders on the project. So that's why they're a low bid. Right,
but if you do cost plus, the idea of cost plus is to catch all those overhead and profit and fat in the project, and that's where the project savings might be. And therefore, it has an assumed understanding that the contractor's work could be valued at whatever cost plus is, the plus. And I'm saying, in other words, is that there isn't a real value to a true value. There may be a true value, but there is the value of cost of construction is very, let's say, personal almost. I would say it almost depends on area or district, or if you're in the Hamptons, you're paying a markup. I do projects there. It's not the values, but you can go to a decent contractor that's not building south of the highway. Suddenly the prices would be different. So you can game the system if you know the neighborhood. But I'm just saying it's a weird. That's to David's point. Your experience would tell you that that cannot possibly be true. But of course, you know that they want that answer for this example.
No, but the reason you're bidding, right, is you're getting a variety of prices back. But you're presumably you've submitted for qualified bidders. So even if a bidder has a huge premium because he's used to building, he can get the money. He doesn't need this project, so I'm going to bid high. Hey, you throw them out. You know, they've disqualified themselves because they're no longer in the competitive bidding phase. So you go to those qualified bidders who are. I mean, if I saw a difference between 10 million and 20 million, I would say, well, somebody's really off here. Somebody's made a mistake. Either the low bidder made a mistake and left something out, or the high bidder is just overpricing it because they don't need the job.
Right, but if you're familiar with, say, Hamptons, you can come in and do this. You know, I know how to go to which kind of contractor and not buy their spiel and know. But when I go to Nashville and I don't know Nashville, you're going to go through this process, which could be very, exhaustive process, which I'm going through, where you're just trying to define why is a 5 and 10 both good.
Right, they're trying to compare apples and oranges, right? Let's see is everybody bidding on the same thing.
Well, yeah, what we do is we actually have them, get their full bid itemized and scroll through and like see kind of where the average is to see who's high and low. And also it depends, like some contractors charge 11% fee and some go up to 20. So that would make a huge difference in the cost.
Some pad all of their subcontractors.
Or if they have an unknown, like in the Hamptons, we are mostly in the flood zone, so with a lot of unknowns, sometimes they jack up the price to cover themselves.
Yeah.
So from the architect's point of view, then, how do you, not knowing what the range will be because it's not built yet, it's not a bid, you have a couple of phases to go through. How do you keep your client to understand that the number you are budgeting is a rough estimate, as in, it could go a lot lower or it could go
Bingo,
double.
That's the problem. Because, for example, I'm in SD phase in Nashville, and I've done every which way you could do a budget analysis. So at the SD phase, we could be 5 million or 10 million. So,
well, typically what I would recommend an architect does is that they give a high and a low range. But you are right. I mean, you always define and specify that this is a rough estimate. There's no guarantee, and it states in the B101 that the architect is not guaranteeing their prices, but it's in your professional interest to be somewhat within the range of a low and a high price. And if you know the area, which obviously you know the area you're building in, you know that there's going to be some exorbitant prices which are at the high end, and there's going to be some which are maybe more competitive. So then when they come in, you got to advise your client. Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go with?
Oh, sorry.
Here's a reputation of one contractor. Obviously, they built numerous projects like the one you're going to be building, and they're expensive. Do you want to do that? That's your choice. Or do you want to go with another contractor, which is $5 million cheaper? And the reason is because they've got blah blah blah. You've gone down and done your homework and researched why their bid's different. And then it could come down to the project delivery.
How many round bids can you do?
Yep.
All right. How many rounds of bids can you do? Like, let's say you do the first version and nothing comes back with any number that that the client likes. Can you just send another bid out and invite other potential GCs to bid?
Yeah, we've had projects where we've been up to like 10 and 11 bidders because they didn't like the price, so they just kept picking up more contractors to see if someone will give them the price they want.
Well, that's not correct, though.
Yeah, that's a dangerous route to go. 3 bids is usually fine, and if they're close to each other, that means that it's not. If there's nothing wrong with the bidders, it has to do with the project. You get confirmation pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you would see a big range, you would want to include more bidders. Like if it's an absurd high and low.
I don't think so. The reason I'm getting a big range is because we're in SDDD, stepping into DD phase. So the less detail, the more volatility in the pricing. So the disadvantage, of course, the reason I'm questioning it is because if you were to plug this back into my contract as an AIA contract, then I'd be obliged to live and die by one of these stupid numbers. And that's not really fair because there's volatility in a variety of reasons. I'll tell you why the volatility in Nashville, because I'm doing a super modern house in an area where they've never done a straight line in their life. And that just makes them double the price. So the psychological stepping, once I go into really bid set with a lot more detail, it's much easier to analyze and to understand it. But at that point, if I was in an AI contract, I'd be obliged to guarantee that bid, which is right. If it went over budget, then I'd be responsible to take it all back.
I don't think you're guaranteeing a bid. I don't think you're wrong about the idea of the detailing or a lack of detailing affecting the price. But there's been cases in our projects where people have underbid, just desperate to get the job, or we were well aware that they would go bankrupt trying to do that.
Right.
We've advised the client not to take the bid. So bidding does help. We discourage early bidding partly because of that, the unknowns within the project.
I think you're right. I think early bidding is not necessarily good. But how do you determine your budget kind of becomes your responsibility if you were doing an AI contract, of course, I'm talking. My contract is hourly, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, managing expectations is a big part of professional practice at what we do. So the idea that you would show that range, but going back to the idea of bidding out something 10 times, that sounds like insanity because you're losing your design fee, coordinating 10 bids, reviewing 10 bids, answering RFIs. I mean, that just sounds like a nightmare.
Well, that's when the client doesn't, like if the client asks for extra, typically we do 3 to 5, but when they ask for extra, we do charge additional services because they go and they find these contractors we've never heard of. And, we're taking a risk too with contractors we don't work with. So if the client just goes out and finds these people, then we actually do charge additional services for that. We kind of stop at like between 3 and 5.
So how do you do that? Do you put that into, are you using a B1 on what contract?
No.
Not? Okay, you have your own contract.
Yeah, and also for our budget, we kind of do like a reverse budget. We ask them how much they want to spend and then kind of, factor in a square footage, like for the area, like in the Hamptons. It's, usually 600 to 750 per square foot and kind of design based on that. Versus inventing a budget.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're basing it on experience, right, of building in the Hamptons, so the 750 square foot is where you're starting off with in your preliminary programming with the client, right? So the client knows, okay, well, I want to build a 20,000 square foot place. This is what it's going to cost range-wise, right? You can give them a low and a high range. It could be up to $1,000 square foot. Depends on what fixtures they pick, right, or doorknob. So that's where the architect basically just has to, all you're trying to do is you're just trying to make sure you're managing the expectations of the client so that when it does go out for bid, you're at least in that range. And that range can be wide. Right. That range could be really wide. At least you're protecting yourself. Yeah. Because, as you all know, it sounds like you're experienced enough to know that, a bathtub can cost one price and another bathtub another price.
Yep.
Can be, $3,000 versus $500. So
FYI, I did cap the fixture fees in that my $5 to $10 million number. I had given them those numbers so that they don't even have that fluctuation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you had another question, Alexandra, about allowances, contingencies. So those you do put in your cost estimates when you don't have a particular definition or thoroughness of what's going into it. So you can say, well, I'm going to allow this much for fixtures. And that's basically based on your experience with that type of a project. Like it sounds like Parnas would have she could actually get really detailed about fixtures and just not even use an allowance, right? You can just say, this is what I'm giving you. Or that would, or Parnas, in that case, would that be your contingency allowance?
No, I still have a 15% contingency.
Okay, anyway. but you were giving them an allowance for fixtures in your estimate.
Yeah, at this phase, yes.
Yeah, so pretty much it's an allowance.
Yes.
But your overall cost, like what you're doing in the Hamptons, for example, 750 square foot. That's not an allowance. That's basically, this is what we're estimating based on the regional costs are for this type of a project. It's going to be in the range of $550 to $1,000 a square foot. So we're in that range. You don't want, one thing which is really dangerous, I'm sure all of you recognize this, you don't want to get very specific about costs.
Yeah.
That's really dangerous because clients will remember that number.
That's
The lowest one.
Asking that question.
Yeah, is that the lowest one?
Exactly.
Oh, and then they want to get it even lower. Like, well, can we go lower? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that experience all the time, and I simply say, okay, well, if you go lower, then something's going to give. Either scope of work's giving, or the quality is giving, or we got to go find the different, make sure we get qualified bidders who have that experience. I mean, how well do you do the qualifications for bidders? Because obviously that's a big deal, right? In terms of managing the project, is getting really qualified bidders who understand the project, who are committed and dedicated to the objectives of the client, and have experience in complexity, if that's the kind of project you have. So there's just not inexperienced bidders bidding on something and just throwing out a premium, or low bidding it in order to get the job, and then you get killed. So that's that qualification, that the document for qualified bidders is really important, and that's really something you should probably put on scratch paper. Is that on the bidding part? Does anybody, do you want to go through this, or would you rather go through some test questions in the time we have?
Let's go briefly through this. What is it?
I sent this to you. This is a summary I prepared just on the project delivery methods.
Oh, this you sent this morning, right?
Yep.
Oh, okay, I haven't looked at it.
Where did you send it? In our email?
I did on an email, yes.
Okay.
I didn't put it on Slack. So tell me if you send me an email if you didn't get it, but I sent it to everybody. Hey, can you see this on the screen?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first 5 are all design, bid, build, which is the most common. So if they have a question about what's the most common contract delivery method, it's the design, bid, build. And as you can see, there's 3 different kinds of AIA contracts for it: 101, 102, 103. You need to know those. So that's, again, a brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely put those down. So you need to know that A102 is a cost plus fee plus the GMP, and 103 is the opposite. It's a cost plus fee without the GMP. And then these, I just wrote down some advantages and disadvantages of what those are: transparency or no transparency. The most common one, according to the Architect AHPP book, is that it's the A101. That's what the majority of projects in the United States are being built with, is the cost, a stipulated sum, a cost cap. So there's no transparency between the owner and the contractor on the books. So don't use your real experience on this one. This is all going right from what NCARB is expecting you to understand. This constructor, when is the constructor or contractor engaged? This is what this whole column is about. And the project, when the project cost established. This obviously makes sense, right? The design, bid, build means it's all happening after the bidding. And there's usually one contract. I don't necessarily think this primary driver is important, but
This is very helpful.
you could find some questions about that, but I don't agree with them all the time.
They have a lot of questions like that.
The primary driver of why you pick these. Yeah, I don't like them, but the reason for the bid build is cost. That's what it says in the book, AHPP. And if you're looking for that definition, it's all on page 512 in AHPP, where it gives you that chart of the primary driver and the number of contracts. For example, they say the negotiated select team is the primary driver is quality, which kind of makes sense, right? You're selecting the specialized team. So that would be quality. Everything involving pretty much with the CEM advisor and agent is a risk. That's the main driver, is the owner wants to get a advisor and an agent to protect them So that's the risk driver. And with the constructors at risk, or that would be a time driver according to HPP. And that contractor comes in at the early phase of pre-design. I think, Jorge, you said they come in before DD or during DD?
We just brought one on at the end of SD.
Okay.
And
So
that
pre-DD.
was, yeah, originally the client wasn't gonna bring one on, but because of the big delta and the cost unknown and the cost estimators, it's just really high. But there's just a lot of complexity in this particular project being an airport, because of the airline involvement and all sorts of stuff. I think they just.
Yeah, see, that's why I don't understand why it would say the primary driver is time.
Yeah, they're not.
I would say that it would be cost.
Yeah,
You want the
in our
constructor
case, that's why we brought them on.
Yeah, they want the constructor to come in to help protect or manage the cost of the project. Time is, you know, I understand why maybe they have time down there because they need to put it somewhere. But that's the only thing I can figure out. Yeah. I'm just going down this quickly. In the design build, they say it's risk is the reason why that's the main driver to go for the design build. And does anybody know why they would pick risk for that?
Well, one entity.
One, yeah.
Okay.
They don't have to coordinate between, architect and builder.
Yeah. Yeah. The risk is that you're dealing with one entity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a plus and a minus. This is what I'm saying. If they go south, then you're in real trouble. Okay, they've got time on integrated PD. That makes sense. That's the reason why you go with that project delivery method is to speed things up, mobilize, have multiple contracts with many players. Everybody comes on board early on in the process. There's transparency, lower cost potential, expedited delivery, etc. So I think you definitely understand. You need to understand A295 contract. And we talked last week about the single purpose entity. That's also a time driver, multiple contracts. And that's when they form an LLC, right? So one of the advantages of the LLC, right, is that there's shared profits, there's transparency between all the parties, and the liability is not passed down to individuals. That's why it's an LLC. The disadvantage is that everybody's sharing profits. So you're not independent in terms of your profits, you're sharing it. And everybody comes in at the beginning of the project on that C195. So know the difference between a C195 and an A295. They're both integrated project delivery methods, but they're both different kinds of contracts. Then you've got fast track, which literally could be, you could fast track a multitude of those project deliveries methods, but fast track is primarily for time. Makes sense, right? And there'd be multiple contracts. Then I just wrote down the owner-architect agreement. You could, in terms of the stipulate, you could do it stipulate some percentage basis or hourly, or you could come up with some other method where you exchange chickens and pigs and do things like that. Some swapping, trading services. Don't laugh. I actually, my wife got mad at me, but I actually came home with a cockatoo once from a client. A client gave me his cockatoo for exchange for some services. That was a beautiful bird. I love birds. So yeah, that was an exchange.
Which country were you working at the time?
I was in New York City.
New York, they have cockatoos?
My client was in Soho. Yeah, we were doing if anybody knows New York City, Soho is Canal Jeans.
Yeah, I do.
Yep, that's my client.
They had a cockatoo to give you?
Yeah, he had a cockatoo.
New York, yeah, they give you a bag of cash and you don't take it.
And then you've got the multiple parties, the joint venture. Have any of your companies done joint ventures, agreements with other firms?
Yes.
Yep.
We're
Okay.
working on one now, actually.
Yep.
How do you pay taxes on a cockatoo?
I think that was all under the table.
How do you claim your services on your taxes?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think my services were a lot, but I mean, I was not only designing the penthouse for Canal Jeans up at the rooftop, but I was also doing his private home out on Long Island.
Well, he's out of business now.
Canal Jeans?
I think he's not there anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was back in the 80s. Interesting. Yeah, he was one of the founders of, at least he claims he was, of jeans, selling blue jeans.
Yeah, he's cash
Yeah. Unfortunately, I lost my investment because a raccoon got in and ate my cockatoo.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I gave him a full screen porch and off our side of our house and got eaten. So the bad karma. Any other questions on these guys? But I don't know if you need to do a brain dump on these, and maybe you find some elements in here that you might want to compare the contracts, AIA contracts, with the delivery method. That might be a good brain dump. You see the A132s, A133s with a CM.
This is a very nice document. Thank
It is.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great.
I was just going over the AIAs and I was trying to figure out how to chart this.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, if you see any gaps in it or things I need to improve or modify, let me know and I'll change it and send it out to everybody. If you think of any advantages or disadvantages that I didn't think of in here. But I think this kind of captures it. I can't find anything else that InCarb would be looking for in terms of these project deliveries types.
I had one question in the agreements, and I was confused about, and that was ultimately what's the difference between the B101 and B201? Let's see if I can find it in your chart.
So you want to know the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can send you, I mean, I'm sure I've sent it to you already, but the whole list of AIA contracts is.
Oh, I have looked at them. I was looking
you just don't
at
know what the
the
difference
AI,
is?
and what you find in their explanation is similar to each other. So I was confused. Why do I need to, there just seemed like a same contract. There's another one that was similar, and that was A132, which is for owner CM as advisor, and there's the same C132. So
Yeah.
A132 and C132 for the SP, both of them SP, they're the same, and I was confused. And I'm worried about this one coming up.
I wouldn't focus at all on anything other than B101 in the B contracts. I wouldn't worry about any of those. I wouldn't worry about B201. It's getting into the weeds.
I see. Okay. I
wouldn't. I mean, if you're aware of it, so that's good. But I don't think you're going to find it on. They're not going to test you on that. Everybody that's talked to me about it says just no. They just can't emphasize enough. No 201, A201, and B101 in depth. So you may get some ancillary questions, but like on the A295 and the integrated project delivery, the C. The things that I've listed on my chart here, I think, would be the ones that you should probably recognize or be familiar with. There may be some questions about design build bridging, so you need to know what that is.
All right.
And everybody knows what that is, right? The bridging. There's two architects involved. That's really that's the distinction of the bridging. So there's an architect that comes in and does the initial concept design, and then you turn that over to the contractor who's got their own architect who's doing the technical CD work.
The European one.
Hmm?
It's the European way, right?
I don't know. Is it?
Yeah. The contractor there has its own architect to work out the technical issues, almost like doing shop drawings, but they redo
Yeah.
their own drawings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that basically the design architect or record relationship?
No, because the architect, it works with the contractor literally.
Oh.
That's a design build.
Okay.
So do they create, in that case, are they creating a joint venture? Or they have some other kind of arrangement between them?
I don't know I thought the bridging means there is for the owner, there is a sort of a single face, but I'm
No,
not sure.
Yeah, you're signing A141. The owner is signing A141 with the design builder. And so you're distinguishing that in the contract as to how compensation is, and architect of record, all of that is in that contract. Anyway, I would take my list if you can deal with it. And I don't know if you need to know C101 at all about the multiple parties in joint venture, but I don't think that's ever come up. But you should know that that's obviously, that that's available. But B101 is really critical, A201, and then you should understand, at least do a brain dump on C195 and A295 are similar in terms of their project delivery. One's a LLC and the other's not. And then your design build contracts, A141s, and then this CM constructor agent advisor. You'll probably run into questions on those for sure. And then the A102 and A103. So I think this list shouldn't be difficult for you to memorize, or at least jot down, so you've got it. And then maybe if you jot them down, maybe you need to just make a quick note as to the project driver for each one of those. So in other words, eliminate everything in my chart in the middle, advantage, disadvantage, when it's engaged or not, on your scratch paper, and just put down the fee type, the contract, and the method, and the driver. I would just get used to putting that down on scratch paper really fast. Anything else on this, or do you want to go on to some other questions?
I'm good on this. We can move on.
Okay. Yeah, this is the you probably can't see this, but again, the 8 codes of ethics. I did a little summary of
We can see it.
Oh, you can. Yep. So you need to know those 6 canons. So I don't know if you need to jot those down on your scratch paper, but you need to know those.
Thank God you did this. So this is the second document you sent, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is good. Thank you.
I think a lot of this just makes common sense in terms of what they really mean, but I just made a little summary over here on the right side is what those basic canons are. Now, those are broad principles, right? And so then you go down underneath each one of those, you've got the ethical standards. And those are specific goals. They're not mandatory. So I don't know if you need to memorize any of these at all. I doubt it, but you should probably at least be familiar if they start talking about human rights or human dignity. Just kind of know if they're in which obligations they're in. Some of them make total sense, so I don't think you have an issue there. Then these are really probably more important, which are mandatory rules. So these are conduct rules that you as an architect can get your license revoked from you if you don't abide by these. So obviously you should know what some of these are. There's too many of them probably to jot down, and I think a lot of them you probably would understand anyway, but standard of care is obviously top of the list. A lot of these just make total sense. You probably practice this already. Discrimination. Obviously, I think somebody just flushed the toilet. Obviously, don't violate laws. No bribery. No fraud. I think something they may say in here about you don't want to do anything without the consent of the client. You don't want to change their plans without notifying that you're going to change something without their consent. You don't want to, in other words, start doing CDs without them knowing, oh my gosh, where'd you come up with that? Well, I just thought it would be really important for you to have this element in the building. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. To the profession, this basically means, follow the respect your peers, don't misrepresent your qualifications. This is a lot of problems where the public has referred architects. They've filed complaints about architects representing themselves as architects or representing themselves qualified to do something and they weren't. That type of thing. So that's what this is all about. Obligations to the profession. And obligations to the colleagues. This includes your employees. And the thing which might come up here is about assisting internships in your practice. Do all of you use interns
Yes.
in your firm?
Yes.
Are they
Yes.
following the AXP program?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that's something that might come up, just because the NCARB is obviously in charge of AXP, so they may have a real interest in knowing that this is something that is a mandatory requirement of architecture firms, is to provide internships.
I didn't realize you could sit for the exam and still not be able to get your license until you complete your AXP hours.
I think it's per state.
That depends
Oh,
on the
is it?
state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's state by state.
Oh, okay. Because I know here in Illinois we have a couple candidates who just completed all their exams, but they still have to wait a little bit of
Yeah,
time.
if you go to NCARB website,
Okay.
they've got a thing there about qualifying for the exam, and they've got a map of the United States. If you float your mouse over and hit each state, it will show up the list of requirements to take the exam.
Okay.
So some of them, it's amazing. I just did it just briefly. California is different than Florida.
Interesting.
Maine is different than Minnesota, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're really excited because they passed, but then they still have to get their experience. They're like, oh, great.
Yeah, and that's 3,740 hours.
Yeah, I mean, they still got a ways to go, but at least they got the exam under their belt.
It is a little bit counterintuitive that they're supposed to get their experience in order to do this. And
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if they found it harder or easier prior to experience to take them, but they passed, so.
this exam should make it harder, but the old one, it was easier for them to pass without working because it was not reality-based.
I feel like if you don't have the practice experience, then it doesn't make you second guess. So basically them learning it for the first time as the book wants it probably makes
Formulaically, yeah.
Yeah. Because you
Bias.
that was something that you're struggling with. Like I would never do that, but I guess AIA wants you to.
And so I'm going to find some questions to go through.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's try this one. Can you see that?
Nope.
Not
Nope.
yet.
Okay. Come on. There. Now. You can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll blow it up. That may be too big.
Fine.
Okay, this is a case study again, so we'll just quickly look at it. I don't like some of you have already determined that you can look at questions. I think this is a good example where you can go look at the questions before the scenario and maybe answer some of the questions before wasting time reading the scenario. But some of the questions may require you to come back and read these subject matters. But we'll come back if we need to if we run into a question. This is a project that looks like it's silos. They're going to be converted into condos. Great project.
Yeah, fine.
You won't find many of those on the Hamptons.
Never know. They just did it in
No.
Sag Harbor, so you can. Yes, you do.
Okay, let's see if I can zoom in now on this question a bit closer. Okay, small firm plans to collaborate with a larger architectural firm. What are the benefits of forming this collaboration? Yeah, so see this one, you don't need to look at the scenario. So choose 4. What's the advantage of forming a collaboration with a larger firm?
Well, you might need to look at it because
Yeah, I'm
there's
sorry. Yeah, you will have to look at it because
Yeah.
it's talking about it could be historic preservation issues,
Correct. Yeah.
right? Of
BIM, ADA, who knows? I mean, we can guess them.
yeah, well, if you want to take a quick look,
Yeah.
let's just look at a quick look. Let's see what it says. Historic preservation expertise. That's the firm has been selected because they've got that expertise.
So they don't need that.
They may not need that then, right? They've got a strong local relationship with the community. However, they lack experience with BIM and multifamily high-rise. So there's some answers right there for you, right? This is a good example of looking at the question and then going back to the scenario and saying, oh, okay, yep, boom, boom, I got it, right? A small firm will seek collaboration with the firm. We read about that. Seeks LEED Gold. It's been changed from light industrial to overlay district, allowing residential and commercial. The site has been selected due to its historical value to the community, aesthetic views of the city and the river, proximity to light rail. This is probably important, this sentence right here. 70 acre, first floor restaurant, laundry, parking, upper floors, 40 loft apartments, LEED Gold, respect historical character, avoid modernity. So that's probably a key word in there too. So let's go on now. Okay, now you can pick 4.
Well, definitely 2.
Yep.
And 4.
And 4. And then there's only 2 left.
Well, we know 1 is out.
I can't see it. The text. Oh crap!
Can't see the text?
I have to turn off the settings. I think. Crap, that's not it. How do you turn off when somebody says something so it doesn't pop up? I forgot. Somebody told me.
Click on Paul's name and it'll stay on his screen.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, remember up in the scenario, it said that smaller firm did not have BIM experience or multifamily high-rise experience, right? So 5
I
would
think
be.
it's 2, 4, 5, and 6. Why do we need local community relationships?
They didn't say anything about ADA.
Yeah, and it also said that the smaller firm had good local community relations. So I think 1 and 2's 3's out, right?
ADA is usually assumed with housing, you know. But anyway, yeah, they could use their expertise.
So probably 2. You're saying 2, 4, 5, and 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
No.
Oh, wow. I see what they're doing.
It's the collaboration between
The
both
collaboration.
parties, right?
Yeah. So
It's
they're saying
benefits
that
to both.
the project client wants historic preservation, so the collaboration is you're adding to the team your value as well as the other team's value.
Mhm. Both
Oh, you're
firms
right.
are
So
beneficial.
Yeah, so
benefiting.
Parnaz, you were right. The ADA is actually irrelevant to the collaboration.
That's actually Miranda said that, but
Oh, I'm sorry. And
Oh, it's saying they didn't mention it.
structural engineering would be irrelevant as well. So that's really an interesting way that they're asking that question. Is it's about the collaboration benefits. You're bringing together the correct team to solve the client's issues. Does that all make sense?
yeah.
Oh, we all got that wrong. Great.
So don't try and do it in a hurry.
We didn't think about it.
Okay, this is a fill in the blank question. Excuse me. You have to get your calculator out. The gross fee for the project is $100,000. Consultant fees are 40% of the gross fee. The firms have allocated the following percentage for net service revenue. Contingency, what is the total project labor budget? Yeah, you got to do some math here.
So, what's the total project?
So you're asking Jorge about doing calculations? Well, this is one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even understand the question right now.
Well, it looks like you got to fill in the blanks under a dollar amount for net revenue, net service revenue, non-reimbursable, multiplying it times the percentage that they've got on the right column, and then adding it all up to get the labor budget.
Can you scroll down so I can see the empty box? Oh, I see. Just the answers there. Okay, so the question you're saying is the project labor, just the labor budget.
All right, so 40% of $100,000, right? The gross fee for the consultants is $40,000. So 60% of 100,000 would be 60,000 for net service revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 5%, 5,000, etc.
Right. I did it that way and I got 305,000.
305,000. Anybody else?
57,000.
The project labor budget.
Isn't it?
Labor. I don't know if I did it right.
Going to look at the answer?
What's confusing for me before you show the answer is this, and this happens to me all the time in exam. I'm trying to figure out what these percentages actually mean. So 95% is non-reimbursable expense total. What does that mean? What is that 95%?
I think that's your labor. I think that's your labor. I think they're just phrasing it to confuse you.
Must come out of this probably comes out of AHPP,
Yeah.
which we'll find out which table it's at. So it probably gives more explanation than AHPP.
But they don't add up. So what is the net service revenue is 60%. That would be $60,000 for the answer, for example. But we know that they want you to deduct that 5%, the non-reimbursable expense. That's your expense.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Just the question alone is. So the answer is 54. What do they do?
Yeah, I got to step 3.
So first you take that, yes. Then you take the 5%.
Yeah, what probably threw you is that multiplying that 5% of contingency, right?
So what is the 5? Why is it 5% of the 60 and not the total gross, for example?
Because you don't want to multiply times the total gross because you got all those deductions out of it. So you want to get your deductions out before you multiply times the contingency because you're killing yourself otherwise.
I see. Then.
So let me go down to this chart here and just see if that makes it clear. So they're saying A times 40%. Well, we knew that. That was given.
Mm-hmm.
A minus B, 100,000 minus 60.
Mm-hmm.
So the resources. So it's on page 625, initial project budget. I think project delivery part 3 in AHPP, this is probably a valuable chapter to read and get familiar with.
This is right out of the book?
Mm-hmm.
Page what again? I'm sorry.
625. Yeah, it's actually right out of the book.
So just to finish studying this, so then D was non-reimbursable expenses, and that's the 3,000. which was the revenue times the 5%. And then non-reimbursable expense total is just taking the net revenue minus non-reimbursable. So that's what's left. Contingency. Contingency is 5%, and we're just assuming it's 5% of net revenue always. I see. Well, it makes sense. I guess the overarching rule was that all of these are calculated on the net revenue, not on the gross.
Right.
The rest is simple.
I definitely would. There's a lot of tables and charts in this chapter. So I think you should really get familiar with this top-down, bottom-up project budgeting. Everything starts on like page 622. Goes through. Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of tables in here,
and I still.
Yeah, I think you should get familiar because I can almost guarantee you're going to run into some of the questions on these charts about how to calculate some of these and understand them. For example, if you, I don't have it, may not have it available, but table 10.5 is how there may be questions about how many hours would be required for these different design phases. And so they give you an example here of how to calculate that. So that's just get familiar with some of these steps. I think that's what they're looking for is the steps.
All right.
Hopefully there won't be a lot of those questions. Okay, here's a drag in place, developing a work plan.
I saw this chart.
The approach to the stages of effective work plan development and utilization involves 4 areas of action: drag and place the action and the location of its engagement. So starts off with plan, then what would be to the right?
Adjust. Check. Do.
I think you check and then adjust. Like you check the plan and then adjust it.
Well,
yeah, that sounds like that makes sense.
You make sense.
So do would be the last one?
Do would be the last one for sure.
Or would it just be the last one?
No, I think doing has to be the last.
Yeah.
No. Plan, do, check, adjust.
No, so this is out of the book too.
I studied this one, to tell you the truth.
Sorry, to go back.
I got it wrong.
The previous question was from the Architect's Handbook, page 622.
625.
625. Okay.
Yeah, it's table 10. It's table 10.6. It's taken directly off of that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'd spend a couple hours just reading that whole chapter. Let's see this plan. Let me see if I can find where it came from. Well, it's probably on here. Page 625 also.
I literally reviewed that yesterday. I just want you to know I still got it wrong because it doesn't make sense.
Well, it must make sense. You can't question whether it makes sense or not because that's what they say is right.
Okay.
Check your plan before you do it.
So here's their explanation. Do the plan into action, put the plan into action, right? Then check it, and then adjust it.
And then lose money.
So just remember, you're going to adjust at the very end. Maybe that's just the key word right there. I don't know. Plan, do, check, adjust. Figure out how to remember that.
I will say that I think this is in reference. The do here is within the office, and not it's not gone to like bidding or something. It's within a project manager's.
That's right.
Early phases.
At this point, the plan and the contract are completed, and the project is underway. So this means it's actually the project is in construction, right? Or does that mean it's in design phase?
I thought it's in project management early. It's in the office still.
Oh yeah, it is. It's actually on page 628. I'm going to correct this. It's not on. It's on page 628. It's a chart. There's a whole bubble diagram on this thing. You know, it gets into a lot of weeds, doesn't it? Okay, here's a choose all that apply. There are 4 basic types of schedules common in the industry. This is really important to know. That encompasses the entire project from programming to occupancy and operation. Identify the 4 types of schedules.
One,
Common in
three,
the
four,
industry.
5. Critical mile bar wall.
1, 3, 4, 5.
Is that what we're going with? 1, 3, 4, 5?
Yes.
Yes.
Going once, going twice. 1, 3, 4, 5. Great. How'd you guys know that?
Well, construction's not our problem.
I didn't.
You've been studying it?
Yeah.
Okay, managing information requires skill in finding, filtering, evaluating, storing information necessary to accomplish the design and construction of the facility. What important considerations for managing information and converting it to knowledge should the architect include? Managing information and converting it to knowledge.
This is part of that KM thing, right? Knowledge.
So could we eliminate, through elimination, we don't have to get rid of 2, could we get a source from social media?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Seems silly. And evidence-based sounds like it would make sense. I don't know why digital format would be critical.
I don't think it's critical either.
I would tend to get rid of 2.
Managing information to knowledge.
Well, I think source from social media is suspect, right? I'd say 2 and 6.
Definitely out.
So you're saying 2 and 6, maybe?
Correct.
Well, 4 seems funny.
So the answer would be 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
I think that no.
Oops. 1, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 3, 4, and 5. Good. Yeah, I think that was a smart strategy, is just to eliminate. When you get a question like that, you try and find the ones which don't fit. It saves you a lot of time. Because if we go back to this, I mean, we didn't even think about some of the other ones, right? You
Well,
just
now
kinda-
can we read the answers again?
Sure.
So the question was about information management, right?
Mm-hmm.
I read too much about this now, and now I feel more confused, but common sense prevailed here.
Yeah, I think that what stood out to me when looking at those choices was the elimination of those really oddball ones that just didn't work. Anything I see in social media, I usually throw out.
Right, but digital format, for example, would fit right into managing information. But what is digital format? I guess I don't know.
Well, let's see. It says that it's not essential. Historical information, pre-digital information remains a key part.
I see. Yes,
That's how they're defining it. Does everybody have this book, the CSI Project Delivery Practice Guide?
No.
No.
I got it.
Sounds like a pretty important book to have. Does everybody know what CSI stands for?
Construction Standard Institute.
Construction Specifications Institute.
Specification, that's right.
Okay, here we go. Multiple choice. B101. Test your knowledge on B101. What's the specified time period for upon the request of the owner, prior to the expiration of the specified time period of the date of substantial completion, the architect shall, without compensation, conduct a meeting with the owner to review the facility operations and performance. What's this time period?
12
One-
12 months.
1 year, yeah.
Great.
Isn't that 1 year the construction warranty?
Yeah.
Yep, that's from that sheet that I gave you, the dates that you need to memorize. 12 months should be correct answer. Yep, directly out of the contract. Claims and disputes.
Oh,
Okay, this is under B101 again. Or is this A401? Seems like it's saying C401. 401. Any claim, dispute, or matter in question shall be subject to mediation as a condition precedent to binding dispute resolution. Mediation shall be conducted as set forth in which document? Wow.
I'm gonna guess B101.
For sure,
Same.
B101.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
had
is in B. Yep. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Yep. It's B101. There's its the statement in here. Any claim, dispute. You should know that, right? Is mediation is going to be the first one.
yeah,
And then what happens after mediation?
arbitration.
Choose arbitration or
And then-
litigation.
And then what?
Litigation.
Then litigation.
No,
And
I
then
thought
what?
it's arbitration, or you can choose arbitration or litigation.
Yeah,
I think
that's what
I
it
think
said.
B101 says it does have or, I believe, underneath it.
It does, because you can't do arbitration and then litigation. Arbitration is binding.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that too.
And then your fifth choice is firing squad, or you go out and you do, what is it called? A duel?
No, rock, paper, scissors sounds better.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, I like that. Okay, here's a A201 question. Architects should know the definitions related to time. Choose 4.
You can take 4 out.
You think?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're calendar years or calendar days. Sorry.
And 3 can go out too, right?
Is out
Yeah, 3 makes sense. Why would it be certified by the owner?
by the
Yeah.
architect.
Certified by the architect, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying 1, 2, 5, and 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Very good.
Calendar day.
Very good. That's a good question. Okay, here we are, C401. Right, this is with the architect and consultant, comprised of several documents. Choose one document that it's comprised of. It's associated with, is another word of using it.
Number 2.
C401 is a consulting contract.
Mhm.
Consultants, yeah. Choose it's going with. Oh, this is what I'm saying. You need to know more.
I would think B101 because
I
it's
had to guess. I would
brings
guess
it
2.
back to the client.
No, but the B101 is with the client. The C401 is between you and the consultants, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, but the B1, but the C401 will refer to another contract. That's what they're talking about here.
Yeah, I think, if you do
Number
B101,
2.
it probably says you'll manage consultants, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to throw everything out, I think B101 would be the one you'd go with if you didn't know the specifically, but that's what it is.
You're right.
In other words, that's the prime agreement. That's what the consultant agreement C401 will refer to, the prime agreement.
As in the requirements, deadlines, scope, project, whatever.
Right.
That's the point.
Exactly.
I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And it'll list the owner's requirement, responsibilities, etc. So it's all falling back. So what's a prime agreement for the B101?
The scope, budget, and time.
No, what's a prime agreement? What's a contract? A contract.
A201.
Between architect and client?
Oh,
A201 is correct. Right.
A201. Yeah, the general condition.
Right. What's a prime agreement for A103?
Same.
Design
Same one.
build?
What is it? The prime agreement for A103. What's a
Isn't
prime
that a
agreement?
project delivery method, right?
Hmm?
Isn't that a project delivery method?
I think it's
Yeah.
still general conditions, though.
It's still the same. Yeah.
It's A201.
One.
Still applies.
A201 is a prime agreement pretty much for everything, right?
Yeah.
If they had A201 in here as opposed to A201 would have been a correct answer as well instead of B101. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If B101 wasn't in this answer, it was A201. A201 would have been the correct answer as well. It's a prime agreement. So just remember those two prime agreements. It'll always be the B101 and the A201. Okay, here we got a hotspot. Move your mouse over to find out these are precedent examples to review. From these images, identify the most cost-effective approach that best aligns with the client's objectives. So do you remember what those objectives were?
Not modern.
Sustainability.
Not modern, so A's out.
Historical, I mean.
How about B? Let's look at the other ones first. C,
No.
D, E,
No.
He's out.
F, G. Oh, G's cool.
That's cool.
H, I.
Holy cow.
Wow, look at what they did to those silos. And I.
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, so what do you think? Got a lot of choices here. Well, which one would be? So they're looking at most cost-effective approach. So you're not looking at projects which look like they're going to be expensive, right? And those with historical value and respect the aesthetics of the history. So you think B's a good candidate?
B's a candidate.
Yeah.
How about C?
It's ugly, but.
How much did they say? Did they say pick one or two? I didn't say. So it's one. You're only picking one. But it's easy. The question, identify the most approach. There's no plural here, so it's one choice.
B would only make sense because they're looking for the ugliest answer at the answer.
That would be the most cost effective, the ugliest building.
That's obviously the most cost effective so far that I've seen in these images.
And historical, kind of like looking like the
everything
original.
else has kind of modified it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Original intent.
D is a backup in H, but
D looks like a hotel, doesn't it?
yeah,
Is that apartment? I can't tell.
looks like a hotel.
Yeah, it looks like a hotel chain. Okay, let's go and see if B's right. B's correct. Yeah, they're not talking about aesthetic value. Well, they are. I mean, the client's looking at historical preservation of the building, of the silos. So these are all too modern, completely destroys historical context, too avant-garde, lacks historical quality. So okay, this is interesting. So this is changing the first floor restaurant to a health club and gym for the tenants. How should the architect adjust the fees?
So it's definitely not too.
First floor restaurant to health club.
I would say 3. If they're just going to keep changing their mind, you should just charge them by the hour.
Yeah, I can tell you're an hourly fee type of
It's like that comes from experience.
Yeah.
I'd say number 1.
Would this be a new contract?
Well, they're asking you how would the architect adjust the fees?
Okay.
So it could say we'll change the contract. That would be a way to adjust the fees.
I think 1 makes a lot of sense if you're in the middle of a project.
It's a specified area. You're just changing the function, right?
Yeah, changing the function.
But it could be a lot of code changes right there. A lot of extra work.
I say it's number 3.
You think it's number 3?
Yeah.
That's number 1.
Got a number 1 and got a number 3.
You're never
Well, I
gonna.
think 3 is the most logical one, but you just change your hourly, but I think it's not reasonable. 1 is the answer. Okay.
Why would you subtract anything? You're only hurting yourself.
Add or subtract. In other words, if you think the
Mhm.
price is different, you could adjust it within the contract.
Yeah, my guess is a restaurant consultancy would probably be higher than a health club consultant, but I'm not sure. It depends, I guess, on the quality of the restaurant. But so that's probably the fair way to do it. Is number 1.
So number one would be keeping the same contract, just adjust the
Yep.
term.
Exactly. Just making the adjustments based on the consultant's fees. Because it really doesn't affect the architect's work too much, right? Because it's just the space that you're providing for the consultant. Remember the Schiff Hardin lecture? Drag and place. Closeout. You need to know about closeout for sure. Adhering to a comprehensive set of closeout procedures allows the project to be completed in an orderly and timely manner. Drag and place the appropriate sequence of closeout activities. Appropriate sequence, that's the key word. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
So we're placing this in order?
Yep. What would be the top priority? Number 1 step sequence of closeout.
Be substantial completion, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. You're not 100%
Startup
done.
testing, adjusting, and balancing of equipment. Wouldn't you? Because substantial completion, they would move in. So wouldn't you want to test it before they move in?
Yeah. But substantial completion would allow you to let people move in.
That's true, and then you would know what needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
Well, final completion would be at final, wouldn't it?
When we took over our recently renovated office at Lead Platinum Space, we were able to move in, and they were still adjusting and balancing things after we were there.
Yeah.
Isn't that what commissioning means?
No.
Yeah, the commission came after that.
Yeah.
Once they just to come in and verify, but we were there and they were messing with all sorts of stuff.
Did you get the award at the very, very end, like a year later?
Yes.
So that's
the
probably
end.
So probably lead
So
certification.
the lead is at the end.
It's probably all the way at the end. Yeah, that
Right.
you get the plaque like 6 months after you finally submit, and they get around to it.
All right, so you've got 1 for the end, so now you got to fill in the rest.
Well, I think the last 3 would be like project, record, documents, and then final completion, and then lead. Right?
Yeah, it seems
I
like
think substantial completion is one of the first things.
First, I think so too.
yeah, definitely the first, and then startup testing, adjusting, and balancing system, or project record document. Does that mean your as-built that you submit to the city?
Hmm.
You mean the commissioning part? I think this is a LEED certified specific closeout because project record documents are very relevant to the commissioning process. And so it's almost like the end of your project, substantial completion, then all the stuff begins.
Well, it sounds like we're all over the board here.
Mm-hmm.
So you still think lead certification award is at the very end? Start there and work backwards? Or you got substantial completion at the top, right?
Yeah.
So you're filling in the middle. Well, don't you think completion of commissioning activities would happen after startup testing? So that would at least be 1 sequence,
Yes.
right? So then it's a question of where do those slide in. Where would you think final completion would be then?
Second to last.
Second to last?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project record documents?
That's a third.
Shall we see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
Well, we had lead certification at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, do you guys feel like you do have trouble with drag and place questions?
I do on this one.
But in general, you don't,
Don't
or they
you
do.
like
A lot of
get
people do
along?
because they find a lot of candidates find that it's really tough to assess the question in the drag in place, and the same for the hotspot. To just find those really difficult questions. This
Where did you
apparently
find
comes
this
from,
answer?
it's in the CSI Project Delivery Practice Guide, Chapter 13, pages 438, 439.
Page 438.
The building department will review and approve the project. What documentation will this authority require for review? Identify 4. So do you want to eliminate 2?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Building department will review and approve the project.
Well, that's not true. In New York City, you're required to provide your asbestos certificate before you get.
I would
any-
take out 3. Wouldn't that be
Yeah, I'd take out
the EPA?
Okay, three's out.
Review and approve the project.
No, you don't need 5.
Building department doesn't involve 5 either, right?
Correct.
Not 5.
Oh, 3 and 5?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
That's right.
So far, we did the silo test without ever reading the problem, their whole narrative.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying is a lot of people say read the questions first because you may be able to answer them without going to the scenario and wasting time.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I wasn't doing that for the first test.
Yeah, this one was difficult.
And then if you do have time at the end of the exam, you can go back and just double check that did I answer the question or was there something in the scenario that I needed to read just to verify it. But so far I think some of the drag and place questions were important, but some of them weren't.
Yeah, on the first test, I had no choice but to read just the answers or the questions because I had no time left. I had like 15 minutes left for the last case study. I was like, I'm going to try to answer these without reading this. Yeah, otherwise I won't finish.
I think, Alexandra, you had a question about, or maybe somebody had a question about the case exams, and
Yeah, the case
it's all spread across, so you do have to pass. You do have to pass each of the case studies, or you have to get high points in those. They're spread across the sections, because you see in these case studies, you see the questions talking about section 5, project quality control, objective 5.2. So this question counts towards that particular section of the exam, even though it's in a case study.
Okay, so case studies don't have their own section.
No, exactly. Each one of these, if you notice, as I went down here, they're all related to a section.
Oh,
This
okay,
is section 4, project execution, objective 4.4. So yeah, each one of these questions in this particular case study refers to a particular section. This is objective 4.3 in project execution. This one was objective 4.4. Yeah, so they're all counting towards your sections.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, let's see. This is according to quality science theory, there are 4 types of quality costs. Choose 4 quality costs, or eliminate 2.
I haven't come to this quality science theory yet.
You don't apply that in your practice?
Yeah, I don't apply that either, but this come up several times in the mock test, the quality science theory.
Okay, well you'll probably know it by heart then after this.
No, I still don't know.
You still don't know it? Okay, we'll see if we can get the 4 quality types. Quality costs. 4 types of quality costs.
External appraisal.
I would think appraisal has nothing to do with the quality. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I'd
I guess
eliminate that.
I think I remember correctly, and this is just totally like shooting from the hip. I think that internal and external is accurate. Prevention is also one. I think climate is out.
the climate seems like it would affect the quality of
You came across this somewhere. Quality
Yeah, it's a
data.
weird thing.
Okay. So you think 3 and 2 and 3 are out?
Don't go with. Forget what I said. I'm sorry.
I don't even know what it is, so everything is a guess.
I never heard of this before until I started studying it.
First time I
All right, well, let's see what it is, and maybe you need to
Maybe.
write this down on scratch paper. Right?
3 and no.
Yeah,
2
climate
and
is
2.
out. Climate and labor is out.
Climate seems important.
Prevention costs is defined as staff training and education.
This comes from AHPP, page 816.
I haven't come to that yet.
So anyway, you probably should just kind of remember if this comes up, it's going to be, right, it's going to be prevention, appraisal, internal, external. It's quality science.
Yeah, I think that the labor thing, I remember it had something to do with the fact that it varies too widely. I can't. That's
Yeah,
why.
intuitively you would think that quality labor would be a quality cost, right? Quality of labor. Okay, this is a drag in place. Architects should understand the difference between quality assurance and quality control. This could be something you'll find on the exam. QA and QC. So which of these? Does it say? It says use the terms more than once. So it looks like 2 and 2, right? So once 2 of them are going to be, well, possibly, maybe not, but which one's quality assurance and quality control? There's kind of a trick to this. Once you understand the trick, you should be able to get these all the time.
Is quality control an overall management plan to guarantee the integrity of data?
That seems like I was
Management
thinking
has
quality
to be
assurance.
assurance.
I think the first one is assurance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, quality control is usually the tools because of I mean it's based on your drawings.
Yeah, just to give you a way to remember this, is a control is always technical assessments and tools. Assurance is more general principles. So you can see the system would be in there, probably the integrity. That word integrity would mean is pretty much assurance. So I think that's the way you've got it right. Assurance is a system. Yep. So does that help you remember? Control is always dealing with the technical assessment. And assurance is always theoretical or systems oriented, not technical, not in the details. Integrity.
Just because it says analytical, it's part of a tool.
Yeah, it is control. That's quality control.
Okay.
It's analytical measurements. So that's the key word right there.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it's doing any kind of technical assessment, that would be under quality control, not assurance. All right, well, that was it on that case study. We've got a few minutes left. Do you want to tackle another one or?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
Boy, you guys are eager beavers.
Can you upload this to Slack as well, please?
Yeah, I can send this to you.
Thank you.
Okay, PjM. Let's try this one. Can you see this?
No.
No, not yet.
Hmm.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. Now?
Yes.
Okay, this is a civic center and ice arena adjacent to a recreational park. This is a program information. children's playground, park pavilion, canoe, kayak storage, boathouse launch. They're going to, you want me to zoom in?
Mm-hmm.
So they got a budget for 25 million for the civic center and 5 million for recreation parks. It looks like 2 proposed ice arenas. This is talking about how they're going to pay for it. Wow, a lot of information here. They're going for lead platinum, so that's, remember that. There's a site. Rank 1, rank 2. The existing ice rink. Playground. Pavilion. Boathouse. Resources. So when you see these resources, that's what's going to be, they would be provided for you, right? So they're going to have a B101, C401, A101, A201, it looks like. Lead rating system guidelines are going to be resources. Okay, fill in the blank. Here's some math. Architectural firm has assembled a number of consultants to include in basic services. Based on this list of fees, the goal of 60-40 split. Architects and consultants. What percentage of construction costs should the architects use? Percentage of construction costs should the architects use?
Mm-hmm.
So add it all up and get 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Were we supposed to differentiate what would be and not included in the?
Yes, I think so. I think the ones that are part of the contract are MEP and structural.
So those are all consultant, structural.
They're including all these in the basic services.
Mm-hmm. How do we know that again?
It says in the question. They've assembled a number of consultants to include in the basic services. So they're going to write all these additional people, all these this list in the basic services. This is what they're going to provide as basic services.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so the total of all of these consultants will be the 40%. So define the 60.
Right.
You define the 60 maybe.
So what's the percentage of the construction cost for the architect to use? So they're probably looking at 7%, 10%, 15%. What is the percent split? Or is the percentage the architect should charge?
This is 1.25 million.
So are you going to need, you're going to need to know what the total budget was, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was?
25 million?
5 million.
25 million. And 5 million for the recreation park, so it's 30 million. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Looks like it's 30 million is the total. So what would it be?
And these guys are 1.25 million.
And that's 40% of what?
Architect, and what is 46 split? Oh.
Do you know how to calculate it?
Not actually easily.
Anybody come up with an answer? Because if you have the total of these consultants, and they're going to represent 40% of your fee, right?
Yeah.
Of the total fee, so then you can work backwards from that total.
And get the architectural one, and then the 30 million. You find out what percentage 30 million is the 60 for the architect.
So it's like 3.125 million.
That's what I got.
Like 11%. 11%, 10%.
Yeah, you gotta give them a percentage. That's what they're looking for is percentage.
So then you have to figure out, that's more like 10%.
I'd say 11. Yeah.
10% is 3 million. This is over 10 million, so it's
I
11.
got 12.5%. Wait, I did it wrong. I did 25 million.
Yeah, that's where it can kill you on the exam is when you don't use the right numbers. Because you're doing the right math, but you just use the wrong numbers.
10.5%. Do you guys get that? Or 10.4?
Do you check it?
I got 10.4.
Yeah, I rounded up to 11%.
Okay, let's see what you got. It is 7.5%.
So we're just wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part, to do this reverse calculation.
Okay.
No, they only did use 25 million.
Oh,
That's why.
maybe that's why.
Mm.
They're wrong.
Oh, is it 25? Probably
Let's-
read the scenario incorrectly.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
So 25 million, but you did the math right, correct?
I'm looking.
So consultants are what?
Mhm.
So the architect's fees would be 3,125,000, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I got
Correct.
that.
I got that. Mhm.
So at 60%, that would be 1,875,000. That's their fee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, divided by 25. So if you divided that by 30 million, you'd get a different answer. We'd have to go back and look at the question and see why they didn't use 30 million. Unless they meant the 25 million was a total construction cost and the 5 million was just simply the breakdown, the breakout. That's how 5 million of that 30 million. I'm sorry, 5 million of that 25 million is for the parks. That's probably what it refers to.
That 5 million might come back to another question, maybe.
Yeah. Scenario description, construction cost 25 million. That's what it says there. Well, at least you got the math right. Okay. The project will require hiring additional staff. What forms are provided to the new employees? You guys know what this one is?
Number 2.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, not one.
No.
2, right?
2.
2, W4.
Yeah.
Which one?
You should all know what you got handed when you joined your company. It's a W4 form. As the project phases proceed, a consultant has discovered missing data that they will require. What form should the consultant use?
Number 3.
Correct. Yeah.
3? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, RFI.
Yes.
That's the consultant.
Right. RFI. Four types of project schedules commonly used in the AE industry. Choose 4. So you want to eliminate 2? This is kind of in that other one, that other case study.
Yeah, this is bar CPM milestone.
No 5, no 3.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 4, and 6. 1, 2, 4, and 6. Correct. Meeting minutes. Architect has conducted a project meeting with all parties. As a standard rule, meeting minutes should include what key element that's missing from the sample below. Let me zoom out.
Who's attending?
The date?
The date.
The date looks
Okay.
like the date's missing. Roll call is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you put down, right?
Yeah.
Be the date.
Yeah. When, where,
Mm-hmm.
and who's it present?
Date
Oh,
is missing.
Date.
Yeah, that's kind of a real problem if you don't put the date down, right? What did we have that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
That could be a real legal problem. Okay. Okay, you should get this one. B101, when does the contract terminate?
Number 1. Oh wait, sorry. Number.
When's the contract
I didn't read
terminate?
the answer.
It's a pretty long
Oh,
contract.
you better go back and review your answers.
3.
B3.
Do you think it's 3?
It looked like a 1 instead of a 10. I was
It's gonna be
three.
1 year after substantial.
That's when you do your walkthrough, right? Well, 1 year later you do the final walkthrough.
Yes.
Yes. 3. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Some
don't get thrown by certificate.
countries,
of
they make you go live in their house you designed. That way you punch listed.
Okay, choose all that apply. This is a C401 contract again. So here, architect and consultant agree to certain provisions, duties, and responsibilities. Choose 4 that you agree with the consultant to, or eliminate 2.
One, two.
I don't think
2 is
3 and
out.
4.
Yeah,
Which are out? 2?
2, yeah.
Who's out?
4 is not marketing and promotion. I don't think
Yeah.
I've seen that in the contract language.
Yeah, I think 4 would be
I think, wouldn't 3 be
Yeah,
out? Because
why
they're
would-
not necessarily required, right?
Why? Yeah. If the
No, I
architect, what if the architect hired an architect of record, or why would you have to be licensed? Why would both of them have to be licensed?
Right.
Well, you're only licensed. You're only an architect there if you're licensed anyway. The word architect wouldn't even
It's an
apply.
engineer, though. They should be licensed.
Yeah, but it says it's a CU401 consultant. It's for-
Yeah, I'd have to go into the language of that contract to see. There is a section in there about licensing, about the project is located. It could mean that you've got to have somebody that is qualified or licensed. It may not have to be. It's got to be on your team. I don't know. We have to look at the answers here. Yeah,
2 and 3.
if required in the jurisdiction, then they have to be licensed.
So they both incur marketing and promotion. Huh. Okay.
kind of, that
I don't
kind
think
of
our consultants paid for marketing.
yeah.
Well, no, but if this is an agreement between you and your consultant, I'm sure you want to devise how to take the photographs, spend thousands of dollars on that. I
exactly.
think you are sharing costs, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're writing this contract with your attorney or something, or yourself, you can cross it out sections if you want, or you can amend them. You can say, on a case-by-case basis, we'll decide whether we're going to share costs in marketing or promotion. I mean, maybe the consultant's only doing a really small part of the project, and something you don't really want to promote because it turned out to be really pretty bad. So you don't want to share the cost of them marketing that project. But they're obviously going to probably publish the building or whatever you've done, right? So I don't know. Anyway, this comes right out of the contract, so I'm not going to argue with it. So I think you got that right in terms of the licensing issue. It's if required by the jurisdiction, then the consultant shall be licensed. Okay, architect has specific duties addressed in A101 and A201. Choose 3. Make sure you remember it says choose 3, not 4.
So we're getting rid of 3. I think what would lead me to be issue is progress wherever located. What if you're doing something in the Arctic? Why the owner? And the contractor, yes, but why the owner?
Well, the architect has duties and responsibilities that are in those contracts. That's what this question's about, is that you should know what your responsibilities will be between the owner and the contractor in those two agreements.
Providing access? You're guaranteeing that?
The owner has to provide access.
Yeah.
It's a 1, 2, and 6. 5 is also.
Yeah.
It's this is 2, 5, and 6 are standard. No?
And
Certifying payments, your certificates of pledge completion, administration of the contract.
4 of them are good.
if I went back, I think 6 I would. 5 I would. I don't know why I would provide evidence of financial arrangements for the work. That doesn't make sense.
For sure,
No,
no.
that's the owner.
That's the owner.
That's
Yeah.
the owner.
And number 3 is them.
Yeah,
Well,
number three.
5 and 6 sound correct, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And 2.
2, yeah.
I agree with 2.
So 2, 5, and 6 are correct.
Yeah.
What about a
You're providing the stamp, not the signature.
What isn't the signature on top? Okay.
But not on those contracts. You don't
Yeah.
sign those contracts.
And on 2, yeah.
The architect doesn't sign those contracts, so it's yep, 2, 5, and 6 are correct.
Oh, it's the A series.
Yeah, A, even though A should be for architect, it's not.
Yeah, nobody's been able to figure that out, right? Why the AIA didn't put us first.
Yeah.
And contractor agreement should be C's. Or anyway,
That would make more sense.
okay, here we go. Contract. This is C401 again. Architect and consultant. Choose 3. What should the architect expect the consultant to provide as part of the scope of services? Choose 3, not 4.
I would get rid of 2.
I get rid of 1. It's a sustainability requirement. Oh yeah, wait, it's a lead project. Never mind.
Yeah, 1.
Keep it in.
I would get rid of 4 too.
4 for sure. Get rid of it.
Advise the architect of the identity of the. Advise the architect. Jeez. Advise the
I
architect.
think maybe 5 is out. Why would
3,
they know who the
6.
consultants are?
If we have to choose 3, and we in process of elimination we can kill out the ones we definitely know are not part of it, and then whatever's left would be correct, even if you're not sure.
I mean, 2 throws you off, but you're definitely supposed to reject work whenever you think it should be for this portion of the
I
project.
think 2 is in.
2 is in. I just don't understand why they say assist the owner in determining, but that's just a nice way of saying it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling these are direct quotes out of the contract. The 3 that are
Otherwise,
correct.
architect, I think.
Who said get rid of 1? That kind of makes sense. Why? Who is the workshop? Why? Where is it? Is it?
Can you leave the questions in, please? Scroll down a little.
Well, if it's supposed to be lead certified, I guess
So,
number 1 would depend on who the consultant is.
But somebody's lead accredited, you only need 1 person, and they wouldn't. I mean, unless there's ongoing education, I don't know why they would.
That's true. They should already be accredited, right?
Yeah, they should already have it. So why would they have to attend a workshop?
Are they present?
Does anybody? What's the prime agreement they're referring to?
this is between architect and consultant.
So they're referring to
A201.
A201 or B101 or both?
And
Both of those, as we talked earlier, are prime agreements. B101 and A201, the prime agreements.
A201.
I think 2, 3, and 6 apply in general.
So you're going to go with 2, 3, and 6?
I would.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
I barely.
3, 4, and 6.
3, 4, and
Uh-huh.
6.
4 works. 2 doesn't.
Yeah, it's the architect, not the owner, in determining the reject work.
This is that's how they throw you off. The assist the owner. Yeah, you're right. So the claims and disputes was right, and the professional service matching ours was right. The only one that's for some reason it didn't make sense at the time but does now is that site
Maybe we're
visit.
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
probably just reading it
site
wrong, that's
visit is
why.
actually the same as for the architect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's in excess of specified number, then it becomes additional services.
What if our consultants didn't have to visit the site? Was the architect?
It's in a specialty agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you should probably get familiar with C401. Seems like it's coming up a lot. Owner, architect and contractor, consultant rather.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. Here we go on budgets. Community plans to build 2 indoor ice rinks. However, if funds are not raised in full, they will phase the second rink to a future date. Given the information on area sizes and costs, what would the project savings be by postponing the second ice rink? So now you got to go back to the costs. So what would be saved if you postpone the ice rink? What does it say about the costs?
Increase property tax to generate.
Well, the size of the rink is 8,000 square feet. Ah, there it is. Right there.
17,000.
You see this? You see this right here? This existing ice rink is $2 million. The sale of the ice rink for $2 million. Is that what they're talking about? No, they're talking about building new one.
That's the second one.
Yeah, they're building the second one.
Well, the income of the hockey rinks is
Wait,
what I'm confused
here.
about.
Approximately 13.5 million.
1.3. Oh, I see. But it's
13.5 says raised.
With the ability to add a second rink arena in the future.
what I'm seeing is that it says that each tournament is expected to have 1.3 to 1.8 million dollars economically impact each year, which means I don't know if that means for each hockey rink or both of them. So if you don't have one, don't you like get this to be half?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
So it hits your income.
So you split the difference.
So
I don't
Well-
think they'd ask you to do that in the question.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about this 8,000 square foot that's looming.
Can you go further up a second?
is it the 13.5 million?
I think it is the 13.5 million.
That's what it sounds like. If they don't raise the money, if they do raise the money, they're gonna do a second ring in arena space.
So that's how much the second.
If the fundraising goal is not met, the community intends to proceed with one rink only. So it's 13.5 million. Good point. You grabbed it. I think that's. Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
13.5 million?
Yes.
But their budget was 25 million, so you have to what?
Subtract that or
Subtract that. Back to the question, what was it?
And would you add the 2 million for the first drink? All right.
that was
13.5.
13.5.
Yeah, because if the funds are
So would that be the right answer?
well, it sounds like that it's like repeating back something directly from the case study.
Why would it
Yep.
say given
So
the information on area sizes and costs? Because you're right, there was 8,000 square feet and a cost.
Maybe
That
it's,
could just-
maybe
that
it's a
could be a-
portion of the 13.5 million.
That could be a distraction.
You think?
Yeah, there's always a distraction.
Let's see.
Oh,
Ice rink, 200. Yep.
No?
Ice rink's 200 square foot
There
times
you go.
17,000
So
square
you
feet.
were right.
8,000 square foot.
See,
25.
here the total budget is 30 million, not 25 million. So what?
So they
maybe-
calculated the square footage cost out of that 25 million and then applied it back to what this portion would cost?
Yeah, they're trying to calculate. They're asking you to calculate the total cost per square foot of the project. Looks like. So the rink 2 is
Alexander was right.
8 million.
But why is this
That's-
one 30 million instead of 25 million?
That's
Because
right.
the 13.5 million, I didn't see that answered as 13.5 million, but
Yeah, they switched it up here. It should have been either the consistent 25 million or 30 million. Which is it?
Yeah, that's why I'm
Well,
confused.
they give 25 right there. They're just talking about the square
Oh,
footage.
this could be a
They
typo then.
subtracted. Well, they subtracted it in the third bullet.
Yeah, they subtracted it. Yeah, that's what it is. Yep. Anyway, yeah, that was a squirrely one.
It was too easy. Sounds easy.
Okay, here's a hotspot. The client has identified 2 key areas where the total project budget can be impacted. Identify these 2 areas in the illustrations below. So, where the budget can be impacted. These are rinks, boathouse, pavilion, existing rink, playground, and 1 rink.
What was the question?
Future rink?
Identify 2. So there's two answers where the total project can be impacted. So obviously this phase 1 rink only, right?
Right.
That would
So
change
that's
the budget significantly.
so that's F.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anything supporting F, right?
Well,
Impacting the cost would be selling this rink.
that makes sense too.
D.
Pavilion could be shared by both. Not that big of a deal. Boats have nothing to do with the rink.
Yeah, I would say that
It's tiny.
yeah, it's not
It's not
can't be
significant.
impacted. It's not really significant. So
Um,
you want to go with D and F?
Yeah.
what's D? Looks funny.
Mm,
D
can
and
you
F.
explain this question again?
Yeah.
This is
They're
where I
asking for
fail. I don't even understand the questions.
Yeah, that's always a problem with some of these, understanding the question and finding out what the intent of the question is. So it says the client has identified 2 key areas where the total project budget can be impacted. Identify the 2 areas in the illustration. So having
Impacted by doing what? By building these things?
probably by eliminating them.
Oh, there you go.
So I look at it as by budget impacted, like think of what 2 are like significant on the budget, like what cost the most. Like a second rink would obviously cost a lot of money.
Right. So these 2, this shows both rinks being built. So that would be eliminated. This is a minor cost. B is a minor cost. Pavilion could be a possible. And D is selling this guy. this rink.
So the idea is what would have the greatest cost on the budget?
Well, let's see what the answer explanation is.
You know.
The community can sell the existing rink for $2 million. Second rink can be postponed, so that's $8 million. So its total can be reduced by $10 million. The scope does include a civic center with a minimum of 1 ice rink, so that's a given. They can't change that. And improvements to the recreation park, including the playground, pavilion, and canoe. So those can't be eliminated from the budget.
So that's why you can't eliminate A, because that has both.
Right, exactly.
Because your first guess would be just eliminate it all. Don't even do it.
Don't do the project.
Okay.
Okay. Contract closeout. There are documents and activities that should be checked for resolution to determine if the architect has completed this phase services. What are those for? So you eliminate 2.
Well, the 6-month follow-up meeting, where does that come from?
Yeah, that should probably be the 12-month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4 is out.
Yeah.
With the number 2, all basic and additional services paid?
I think 2 would be out as well, because
I think it's 3. Doesn't punch list, doesn't that go to the contractor?
Yeah, I think it's 3 too, because closeout, punch list is done. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, and the copy should have been done.
Well, the architect's trying to
Before final.
determine when he's completed the construction phase services. So he's got to have his, what are these 4 things that they need to check off?
So this is prior to substantial completion, construction phase. It's not final phase.
Right. Well, construction phase.
It's construction phase services, which is, substantial completion and the rest.
Okay, so this is right before substantial completion.
So then I would take out number 2.
So 2 and 4 is out.
2 and 4, yeah.
You sure?
No.
Yeah, why not?
You got 30 minutes. You got
No, but additional services can come all the way to the end. I don't know when I'm not sure if you're paid that up front, but by closeout you should have been paid, but never know.
But that's not the architect's.
2 and 4.
Yeah.
This comes from AHPP page 733.
Right. So closeout.
Well, you got 4 right because it's a 1 year. It's a 12 month, not 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the payment has some time, even if you done substantial completion.
Yeah, therefore it may not be expected yet.
Right.
I'm sure you've all finished projects and they're still waiting for payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, waiting for payment means you've finished the architectural services. You're just waiting.
Right. Okay. Who's the approval authority for LEED Platinum certification?
US
GBC.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, here's an interesting one. Most management tools used in the world today has many advantages for practice. Choose one of these which has the most advantages for the practice.
Somebody needs to mute their
Somebody's washing dishes.
Yeah. Or taking a shower, something.
My background. It's my background. I'm gonna cut it out.
So which of these do you think is the one that architects benefit from the most? Management tools. Does anybody know what Six Sigma is?
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
you should probably know what that is.
Like,
And
nope.
TQM. You know what ISO 9001 and 1401 is? 14001?
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay, well then that won't help you with this question, but you need to know these. You need to know these. Okay, Six Sigma. You need to go to AHPP and just read about these on pages 819, 820. So at least you get familiar with them. I'll send this to you.
Please.
So you got the TQM.
International Organization of
ISO 9001 is the standards that provide guidance for the products and services, customer requirements. So that's the one that you typically rely on a lot, ISO 9001. So just get familiar with those, and then I think you'll be fine as long as you know what the differences are then. I think this is the last one. Drag and place, quality management. It's all inclusive. It is an organizational methodology for improving the effectiveness of products and services. In programming, schematic, and post-design, there are key elements that are incorporated in each. Drag and place the term with a corresponding element. Each term will be used 3 times. Can you see those?
Yeah.
Do I have enough? Oh, I don't have enough. I got to zoom out.
Hey, my name is there.
Okay, can you see those?
Yeah. Okay. Eat 3 times.
So as an example, the idea is post-design is benchmarking? Vetting? Is that?
I feel like programming is benchmarking.
Well, I'll start with the top, which is design retreats.
No idea. Sounds weird. Obvious.
Well, I guess it would happen at the beginning, probably, of a project, right? So it's
Well, I don't know. I think it's weird. Like Perkins and Will, we would have a design retreat where we would all go to Monterey and sit around and talk. It had nothing to do with the project.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking since it says design retreats, it probably is not programming because probably is either schematic design.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be post-design either unless that's a celebration retreat. But I don't think that's what they're referring to here.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yeah, I've had design retreats where we've gone to a ski resort and had fun, but also had business meetings.
I would leave that at the end.
Strategic meetings. So how about peer review?
Schematic design.
Okay, vetting.
Programming?
Post design?
What are you vetting?
Your design.
Design.
Yeah, I mean, you could be vetting your program.
Yeah.
Like going back to the client, this is what we heard. Do you agree with this? Sustainability, sure.
So obviously, program planning, programming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going off of the ones that I know and eliminating them because.
Well, phasing would make sense to be under programming. Maybe.
Yeah.
And kickoff charrette would be schematic design because unless you're doing conceptual, you're doing schematic design, DD, CDs. So schematic design would make sense under the kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't benchmarking at the end?
Yeah, I
That's
so.
what I thought.
So programming and planning obviously is under programming.
Yeah. Phasing would be post design is too late.
I mean, sustainability, it would make more sense to do that in schematic design. But you could do it post design, say, hey, did we achieve our lead goal?
So schematic design, you start having actual like plans, bubbles, you know, right? Programming is just getting the program in, doing a bunch of background stuff before you even put a design down.
Yeah.
Like, it help to think that way, because then if you're doing like sustainable charrette, that means you're implementing something.
Right.
I'm trying to think about it the right way, because there's such a thin line between programming and schematic. Like, I mean, sometimes we skip programming altogether. You know, we just join them in.
So what are the three for programming?
Ugh.
Program planning.
Program planning,
Phasing.
phasing, kickoff charrettes.
You could do a kickoff charrette in programming.
So those are three. And about schematic design then.
Design seminar.
Design seminars, design retreats,
Sure.
sustainability charrettes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
post-design vetting,
Vetting,
or peer review of post-design,
benchmarking.
benchmarking, and what's left?
I thought that was it.
That's it.
Design retreat.
Okay, let's see.
What?
Yeah, crap.
Yeah. Like, what the hell?
You're right. Design retreats is at the end when you go out and have a party.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you
you
wouldn't
got one.
at the beginning before the work starts. So.
So programming would be under schematic.
Is it because you're already planning the
Yeah,
program?
it's already you've already got the program, so now you're planning it in the phases, I guess. This is all iffy, I guess. It comes from page PP, page 825, H32.
So what are you vetting in programming? Are you vetting the program and all the stuff that's unnecessary so you can move on to schematic?
When I designed a high school for the fine and performing arts, and all the teachers put in everything they wanted in their classroom, and then we had to go back and vet it because it was crazy. Like, they couldn't possibly get everything they asked for. So, I mean, vetting makes sense, but this, I gotta tell you, this is really where I screw up, because this is
this is all straight out of the book. I'm looking at page 825. Under programming, it's got well, it doesn't really assign them to those different phases. Oh, yes, it does. Yeah, it has vetting. Actually, it has program planning under programming. So that's a mistake.
Great.
By the way, you do come across those where they do make mistakes. So in schematic design, they have understanding, synthesis, evaluation, optimization. That doesn't make any sense. Process planning, kickoff charrettes, sustainability charrettes, design audits. Under post-design, they've got design seminars, design retreats, peer reviews. So the only one where they made a mistake, it looks like, is program planning. Should be under programming. But vetting is under programming.
So it'd be 4 under programming and 2 under schematic?
Yep. Program planning is under programming. Phasing is under programming. Vetting is under programming.
Are you phasing the
Benchmarking is under programming.
Phasing under programming means it's more related not to like project phasing, but more of work phasing, as in like schematic design phase, DD phase, right?
Yeah, I'm reading it. I'm reading the paragraph on it.
Because my brain wants to quickly jump into phasing. All right, how are we phasing this project? But it seems that it's also phasing the workload.
Yeah, they're referring to it as program phasing.
Yeah, that would explain why you have the benchmarking, because if you do the phasing, then you have to have a benchmark to associate it with. All right, so those two go hand in hand.
That's
I
right.
Associate them together, otherwise they don't make sense on their own.
Yeah, that's a tough question because it's, as I say, it came right out of the book. The only problem is that they got the program planning wrong. It should be up in the other category.
So if it's up in the other category, well, that was in schematic.
Under schematic, they've got synthesis, understanding, evaluation, optimization, process planning, kickoff charrettes, sustainability charrettes, critiques, reviews, design audits, restaffing. That's all under schematic design.
Okay. I thought
So
we had
it sounds like all the charrettes are underneath the schematic design.
Yeah.
According to this book. Now, that's the thing is that, this is NCARB is going with AHPP. So that's what's getting into the weeds there, but I wouldn't worry too much about stuff like that. Anyway, that's it. So, is everybody scheduled to take the exam next week?
Saturday.
I'm delaying mine a few days.
Yeah.
I'm taking one. I'm taking it tomorrow morning. It was the only time available I had.
I actually went to the one farther
This
out
whole
because the one
week, and I was
close to me was kind of full, so I went to the one that's 30 minutes away, so I could do it on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm doing it on Good Friday.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on vacation next weekend, so I said, well, let's just do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, good luck. And let us
Thanks.
know.
I'll let you guys know. Yeah, I'll be first one out of the gate this time.
But I actually looked. It's a much higher pass rate on overall for this exam, so in theory it should be a little bit easier.
Yeah, it does zero in on the contract, so that kind of
gets
you down to some specifics.
Yeah, it's just gonna be memorizing today, which should be fine.
And again, don't overthink the question or don't challenge. Don't challenge the question. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
and try to disengage yourself from your own practice in terms of how you do things. Think about how they want the architect to follow the rules or their guidelines.
So don't think of the way that you do it. Think of the way that somebody else would do it.
Yep.
I have a question, guys. If you want to cancel, I wanted to change my date. What do I do if it's 3 days apart?
You can.
I think it's 4 days actually. It's noon the 4th day before.
Right.
But if mine is due for 18th, then I'm already late.
No, they just charge you more. Yeah.
What?
They just charge you more as you click closer to the date, the fee goes up. But you can.
Actually, the last 4 days, it says that you cannot, because I was going to cancel my last exam, and it says you could not show up, but you would lose your entire price. You won't get any money back.
That's correct.
So it's just a money issue. It's nothing else.
Yeah, but I think if you don't show up, even if it's just the money, you could reschedule your exam for a week later versus waiting 60 days.
Because it's not a fail.
Oh, okay. That's what I mean. I just want to change it a week more. I think I need a week.
I guess they changed it then because they would always let you.
Well, look at it this way, Farnaz. If you're going to lose your deposit or your money, go ahead and take the test.
Yeah.
That's
Why?
what I did
Because they
last
lock you out for 60 days then.
Yeah, but it's like a test. It's just a prep. Like you're just testing for practice. What's it gonna hurt?
And you got 4
But
days.
60 days from now,
cram for 4 days.
Everything I read already.
You could just cram for 4 days. Just crank it out.
Yeah, not with.
Oh no.
There's really.
I got sick for a week, so I can't even. But I'm really thinking, because that's a mistake I made in the last test. I just needed 5 more days to really speed up my testing, and I didn't, and I went and took the exam. Now I'm blocked out.
I mean, I think that you really need to be in the 65% passing average on your practice test to take the test. If you're not there, you should probably postpone.
I'm not, so there you go.
Yeah, so that's your answer.
I'm
How did
just barely there.
How did we decide the best way to retest were the ones that you do fail? As in, like, now it's all fresh in my mind, and if we, 60 days down, we're going to be in completely different territory.
That's right.
Like, do you just wait until the end and re-study it?
I think you just review a little bit of, like, if you did like 30 minutes a day of the exam you failed, at least it'll keep it fresh in your brain. Like, you don't have to cram the last 2 weeks before the exam, and
Yeah, just
like
double it up
slow
a little
learning
bit.
maybe. Like if you did 30 minutes for that exam and then the rest of your time for the current exam.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would.
I'm just wondering, in like,
Yeah, you're going to have a phenomenal brain stress when you get into PPD and PDD.
Right.
They're huge.
Exactly why and you also said that it's completely different thinking. So like, why? I'm afraid of like losing the way that we're thinking now.
I'm hoping to take all three of these by the, like, I'm going to take the one I failed at the after CE, so that before we enter those hard three, I hope to have recovered from these. Otherwise, it's really re-looping back to the beginning for me.
Yeah, I think you need to gain that confidence and just start doing at least 65% or higher on the practice exams on an average.
So I've been very confident in
That
it.
still doesn't guarantee it, because I've had some students who get 85% and they still fail.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes it's a draw of what exam you're getting. Some students are getting really tough exams and some are getting easy exams.
Yeah, I definitely had some questions that were basically a giveaway question on the last exam.
Mm.
Lucky you.
Oh, yeah, lucky you.
All right.
Do you have anxiety with testing?
Yes.
I think sometimes just going in there and doing it helps, because it just kind of, well, it depends, but it takes away all the fear, because you get more used to the testing center, you get more familiar with the format. It's kind of like, riding a bike. If you keep riding, changing tires, and get used to fixing your own bike, the anxiety is going to go down. I would still, I agree about having confidence. I mean, to me, I'd still rather test, just to get the experience. And
Yeah.
You know what I thought about when we should be testing in a busy environment? I'm like, what if I just take my laptop there in the waiting area?
Yeah,
they do recommend that you go to some place which is not comfortable. Don't do it at home with a cup of coffee. Go to Starbucks or go to a busy place where there's a lot of distractions, and take a couple practice exams in that environment. So you get.
This might sound silly, but I have a sweatshirt that I wear with a certain like perfume on it that I like. It gives you that comfort of familiarity, even though you're in a weird spot. It's worked on other tests for me. I think I'm going to try it out for here too.
Yeah, they do. Actually, they do tell you to wear the same clothes that you've been practicing in to the exam.
Sweatpants.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know.
Don't wear uncomfortable brand new shoes, for example, or a starchy shirt.
Yeah. Also bring earplugs.
Yeah, definitely.
And dress in layers. Sometimes that testing center is freezing, and other times it's super hot.
Yeah,
They don't let you take too many clothes in that test center I go to.
Yeah, test them. Wear about 8 layers of clothes and see how many they make you take off.
Well, no, that's when they start frisking you, like they did me. So
they frisk everyone now.
Unless you want to,
The testing center I was at in Miami was being renovated over the weekend, so they had major tenant improvement in the corridors. It was horrible. The entire time they were ripping out ceilings, and I couldn't believe it.
You should complain about that, though. That's absolutely absurd.
I did, but they're like, whatever.
There's been a lot of bad experiences at these Prometric centers, which it makes a lot of people uncomfortable and it's unfair. I mean, that's not what you're going there to do, is to confront Prometric's environment. You're going there to take a test.
Yep. Maybe go to another one? You have another?
Yeah, it's true. I've changed a few around. I found a good one now, relatively.
Well, I could send you a couple notes on taking test tips, but I think you may have gotten those originally, but I can send them to you if I didn't already. that have been passed down through some of the other candidates, and I'll just send that to you. It's like 1 page long, and then practice your brain dumps. So when you get in there, you can immediately put down stuff and get them off your chest.
How do you practice brain dumps?
How do you practice them?
Yeah.
Well, pretend like you got the same kind of sheets of paper that they give you Prometric, and
Okay.
just sit down and immediately start jotting down all the things that you can put down that you can remember. But you
Yeah.
don't want to have to.
Random times in the day, like lunchtime, dump, brain dump.
Lunchtime? What do you mean?
So unless you're like staring at
Every time I've taken a
I just
practice
meant that,
exam, I give
it doesn't-
myself
it's okay.
4
I'll figure it out.
blank sheets of paper and 2 number 2 pencils, which is exactly what I get at the exam, and that's all I get to use, just so that I know I'm not.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't
That's
get
good.
to use a different type of pencil or anything, just so that it feels.
Good. Exactly. Try and replicate the environment, Prometric environment, as much as you can.
Yeah, and I usually test with my kids running around screaming, so that really focuses my.
Excellent. That's the way you should do it. Cats crawling on your back and shoulders, and
Pretty much, and the dog on my feet rubbing. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
If you want to change appointment, what do? You go online? You
I think in the Promet, you have to go back to the Prometric website. It might be in the email they send you.
Yeah, it sounds like they sent you back to NCARB. Anyway,
Sorry, it is an NCARB. You can see where your scheduled exam is on NCARB, and I think you
but I
can
don't
from there
see
too.
where they, yeah, it's pretty cryptic.
well, keep your notes handy.
Well,
Because we'll be covering a lot of the same material in CE, so it'll all come back to help you.
Okay.
And we'll dive a little bit into PDD as well for CE. Exactly.
Okay, so what's our next one?
All right.
CE.
CE. We're doing CE next, and then PA.
Okay, yeah.
CE also had a very high pass rate, so I'm feeling good. It had like a 70% pass rate. It's like the highest exam.
Right. Yeah, that's a fairly easy one.
All right, so CE next, and then.
Okay, everyone. Good luck. Wish you
Thanks.
well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Good luck, everyone.
Thanks.